What's up guys, Tim Little, welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking spring swim baits. Spring swim bait fishing, now is the time. If you're not a swim bait fisherman going into the spring transition, now is the time to get confidence in these baits. Today we're covering it all, hard baits, glide baits, soft swim baits. Let's go. Spring swim bait fishing is such a huge category, so I will try to simplify this as much as possible, but there's going to be a lot of information in here, a lot of different baits, a lot of different styles of baits. So just like every video, down below in the video description, we will link everything out, the types of hooks, the gear, all of that stuff, so you don't have to bother about taking notes because it's going to be a lot. So first, I want to say thank you so much. We appreciate you guys so much. We hit 400,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Just mind-blowing. You know, when this whole thing started, that was never the goal, but very blessed, very appreciative of you guys. So thank you guys. All the different comments we saw on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate you guys. You guys rock. Man, I think I jinxed myself. The last video I did, I talked about spring is coming and top baits, and the next day or two it rained a ton and then actually snowed. But just getting back from our trip down south to Florida, you guys got to see some awesome footage last video. I'm back home now in the frozen tundra. No, not exactly, but definitely doing this video inside because it is pouring outside. But with that said, 400,000 subscribers. You know, that last video I did talking about spring, you know, we got the whole gamut, right? We got people up in Minnesota and Wisconsin, New York, talking about how many feet of snow they got. And then we have guys down in Florida or Texas, Arizona, talking about pre-spawn and spawn. So all these videos can be applied to you no matter where you are. It just depends on where you are in the calendar year and adjust accordingly. So this information today will be applicable to you guys up north as soon as you guys thaw out and unfreeze. You guys in the warmer weather areas, this stuff you can apply today. So let's get started. Again, I'm gonna try and simplify this as much as possible because I have a ton of baits here. And you know, swim bait fishing can be overwhelming with all the things on the market, all the different baits, all the different styles of baits. So this video will have everything from beginners information all the way up to advanced. You know, Matt and I, especially Matt, has been doing this for decades, and myself, you know, 10 or 15 years throwing big baits, swim baits, glide baits. So we have a little bit of knowledge on the subject, and gonna try and help you guys out because springtime, you guys know that is the time to catch the most fish, catch the biggest fish. Those pre-spawn females are staging up. Their bellies are full, they're feeding up, they're full of eggs. They weigh the heaviest they're gonna weigh of the entire year. So why not go out and throw a big meal for them and better your chances at catching a double digit or a new PB. So right off the bat, swim baits. I love throwing swim baits, but today's video is going to talk about baits that are readily available. You can spend hundreds of dollars and wait several months to get your hands on a custom bait. That is a whole different genre, whole different area that I'm not going to go today. Today we are talking about swim baits that you could go to your local tackle shop or, you know, click the link to Tackle Warehouse and purchase today. So there's a whole different class of swim baits out there for, like I said, very expensive, very custom stuff, but that is not today's video. So again, you can get as crazy or spend as much money as you want on big swim baits, giant glide baits, but today's video, we're talking about stuff, like I said, that you can go to the tackle shop and get today and go out and fish today and hopefully stick the biggest bass you ever have seen. So I'm gonna break this up into 4 categories. We're gonna talk about soft swim baits. We're gonna talk about hard swim baits. I got so many different baits out here for you, but we're gonna talk about hard swim baits. And then we're gonna talk about glide baits. We're gonna break it up into 2 different categories on the glide baits because they have different applications and some shine in different areas. So we're gonna talk about cover glides and open water glides. Again, all this stuff will be down below in the video description. We'll link all of our favorite colors, favorite baits, and all that good stuff. So let's start out with soft swim baits because I have them all laid out here right in front of me. You know, again, a lot of this stuff you will need specialized swim bait gear for. You know, more stout of a rod, bigger reel, bigger line, all that stuff. I will get to that towards the end. But for baits right now, just like we've talked about in previous videos, you either have to trick or fool a big bass into eating or tie into their natural instinct and react, make those fish react to the bait. That's where your square bills come in, the stuff deflecting, moving quickly. So let's talk about making your fish or tricking your fish. If you're a clear water fishery, let's say you're a trout fed fishery, you know, those fish are eating big trout. Hands down, more double-digit bass have been caught on this guy right here than any other swim bait. It's the Huddleston Deluxe 8-inch swim bait. You know, this guy, like I said, has been accounted for so many, probably thousands of double-digit fish. It's my PB was caught on, 15-pounder. It's what Matt's 17.2 was caught on. So big fish, eat them. But again, very realistic. It's a soft swim bait, jig hook on it. But this is going to be your #1 bait if you need to fool your fish. If you're fishing a highly pressured water, if you're fishing clear water that has trout in it, this is going to be your #1 go-to. Just like I said, I will link some of my favorite colors, but just the rainbow trout in an ROF 12, that is going to be the #1 pick. You can't talk about a swim bait video, can't do a swim bait video without talking about that guy right there. You know, what makes this bait special, it's got that vortex style tail. It's just a real subtle, realistic looking tail. And that is gonna fool the big ones. Can't go wrong with the Huddleston. Now this bait specifically, most of these baits will take some specialized swim bait gear. I will link that down below. We'll talk about it towards the end, but that guy is the #1. The bait that I really want to talk about, or at least mention real quick, is this guy right here. This is the Savage Gear 4D swim bait. Now, what's cool about this is it comes with holes in it where you can rig it with a stinger hook up top. You can rig the treble hook up top. You can rig it with the belly hook. But why I'm talking about this bait and why I want to show you guys this bait, it has kind of that vortex tail, same style. You know, you're dealing with patents and stuff, but it passed the test, and you can get this at your local tackle shops. But what makes this, well, 2 things that make this bait special. One is obviously the photorealistic paint. You know, it's very, very realistic. But 2, what really stood out to me about this bait, and Matt as well, you know, designing our crankbait, we got to spend a lot of time on a test tank. Not only did we get to design and tweak our crankbaits, we got to compare all sorts of baits, glide baits and swim baits, all sorts of stuff, weightless Senkos, all of that, underwater, and just see how they swim, how they look. And this guy right here was the #1. I mean, that thing stood out. It stood out so well. It swims so good. We're going to be putting a ton of time with this bait this year. It comes in 6-inch, comes in 8-inch, comes in 10-inch. But that guy right there, if you need to fool a bass, a big bass, go with one of these 2 guys right here. They swim very, very well. They're very easy to fish, fired out there. You know, if you're throwing the Huddleston, let it hit bottom and just creep it. As that water warms up, get more aggressive with it, fire it out there and just fish the shoreline, fish that shade line or that deep edge where that visibility disappears, and just fish it like a spinnerbait. Same thing with the Savage Gear. One other guy I want to talk about, if totally depends. You know, those are your trout imitators. But this guy right here, this is actually the Matt Lures This is a phenomenal swimming bait, great looking bait if your fishery has gizzard shad in them. Big shad, it totally depends on your fishery, depends on what your big fish are eating, but we have caught plenty of fish on this bait right here when we didn't think or know that there was gizzard shad in the lake or the fishery we were fishing, and vice versa. We've caught tons of fish on a Huddleston or a trout swim bait in lakes that didn't have trout. So just know that you're trying to match the hatch, but it doesn't have to be identical and doesn't necessarily have to be what's in your fishery. But when you're trying to fool a big bass, those big bass have been around for a long time. They've learned a thing or two. So go as realistic as you can if you're trying to fool. And that's what we're talking about with this category. We'll get into a couple other categories where you get them to react, but that is another great swim bait. Throw it out there. Again, you're gonna fish it just like you would the other two. Definitely check out these guys right here. Two more that I want to talk about, and then we'll go with some weedless stuff, because that has a major, totally depends on the type of stuff you're fishing, but if you can fish a weedless bait through your bulrushes, your toolies, your cattails, that sort of stuff, you can get back in that cover and really pick that stuff apart when those fish haven't seen a swim bait in that type of stuff. But two more real quick, open water stuff, and then we'll talk about some weedless stuff. Now you guys have seen this guy right here. Those of you guys that have followed the channel for a long time, you guys know how much I love that 6-inch osprey. Caught tons and tons of big spots on it, big largemouth. Again, it's a very easy bait to fish. What differs these next few baits from the previous baits is going to be the style of tail. Now, our new followers may not know this, or maybe you do. Some of our older subscribers, guys that have subscribed with us for a long time, understand the difference between a vortex tail and a boot tail swim bait. So real quickly, this is going to be a real subtle tail, very realistic, very natural, very slow kicking. This is not. This is going to be more aggressive. It's going to kind of have some roll to it. It's going to be more like a bait fish, a frantic bait fish, where that tail is just kicking like that. You know, that vortex tail is just going to be slowly paddling, where this guy's going to be all over the place, just looks more frantic. So you're going to want to fish these as the water warms up. So the vortex style stuff will work all the way through the winter if your water is not frozen. But as this water warms up, getting with a boot tail swim bait is a must. So that guy right there, phenomenal bait. And then this guy right here, you know, I talked about the Savage gear, watching it underwater and seeing how well it looked. But this one was the other one that really stood out. This is the Megabass Mag Draft. And this is a Japanese bait, so it's very, very fine-tuned, well-tuned, if you will. But didn't really stick out to me until about a year ago. And so this last year put a lot of time in on it. This is a must. If you guys like throwing belly hook swim baits, cast them out, just reel them back. This thing swims great. It's got that real good kick with that boot tail, but it also has real good body roll, body movement. So when you're watching a fish try to get away or a fish cruising, its tail's just not kicking. I mean, its gills are flaring, its scales are flashing, its belly rolling. There's a lot of other movement than just that tail. So that guy right there, phenomenal bait. Those two guys right there are winners. Now, to wrap it up, again, I know this video is going to be long, so I will leave all these notes down below in the video description for you. But I just want to get all this information out there so you guys can apply it to your confidence or your style of fishing and your fishery. So next two baits, the last two baits in this category that I want to talk about, let's go with this guy right here. This is the trash fish. This is actually the fatty, and this is the 8-inch. Now, what's so special about the trash fish? Now, this is a West Coast bait. It's been out for several years. Lots of money, lots of boats have been won on it. It was kind of a West Coast deal for, I don't know, the last I don't know, 8, 10 years, let's say. But the last few years, we've kind of talked about this bait. Started probably about 3 years ago, because we knew we were talking to guys that were winning on Kentucky Lake ledge fishing. We knew guys out in the south fishing it, southeast fishing it, and doing really, really well. They just didn't want to talk about it. But this is a phenomenal swim bait, and you don't need a swim bait rod to throw it. Again, that's the little 6-inch fatty. But what I want you to notice about this bait, see how soft it is? This thing is so soft. This is a bait that you're gonna fish very slow on bottom. Yes, you can throw it through the stuff like I talked about earlier, the cattails, the reeds, the tulies, whatever is on your fishery. You can cast out and reel it back, but the slower, the better with this guy. All these little fins, all the extra detail that went into the design of this bait, it really shines when it's fished slower. So you can fish it on bottom, you can creep it, or you can fish it slowly and let those fins dance and just look really realistic. One of my favorite ways to fish it, throw it out. If you're an offshore fisherman, maybe you're fishing a transition, you remember these fish are staging, right? We covered that and where they're going. So they're on that last break before that flat. So you fire this out there, let it hit bottom, and just slowly creep it. Let that tail kick, let those fins do their thing. It just looks so realistic, and it's gonna feel like a jig bite. Dong! I mean, they knock slack in your line eating this thing. But that's the 6-inch. Here's the 8-inch. If you do want to throw a bigger profile bait, you do want to go after those big fish, then you jump it up to that 8-inch. But again, very, very realistic, and this thing shines when you're fishing it slow and you want to fish weedless. The other bait that I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll move on, it's going to be this guy right here. This is the Scottsboro tackle. This is the 6-inch swim bait. I really like the 6-inch. I haven't played around with the smaller ones, but the 6-inch is just the right size. Kind of has that same size as some of the other swim baits that I really like. Just catches 2-pounders, it catches 10-pounders. You know, you're not throwing the gigantic stuff that limits your bites per se. So again, you can catch everything with this little 6 to 7-inch. Kind of seems to be the right size if you're a tournament fisherman and you don't want to swing for the fences, but you still want to try and get those big fish to commit. That 6 to 7-inch size kind of allows you to target those bigger fish while still catching fish to fill your limit, if that makes sense. But this guy right here, that Scottsboro tackle, great swim. Go ahead, I rigged that with that beast hook. Again, it's weedless, kind of just texpose the hook up top. You can fish it through your reeds, your tulies, your grass lines, but swim bait fishermen, that is a must if you guys are throwing weedless baits. All right, so that was soft swim baits, and that was probably the largest category. Well, maybe not if you combine the cover and open water glides, but that took the longest. So next, I want to talk about hard swim baits. We'll kind of go through this fairly quickly because in my mind, the hard swim baits, it's not that I don't have as much confidence in them. I don't fish them as much as I do a glide bait or the soft swim baits, but they have a time and a place. Springtime, as that water's warming up, you got a bright sunny day, those fish want to get up, heat up, sun themselves. A hard swim bait, you know, just to be clear, a hard swim bait is going to be something that is, you know, obviously it's a hard bait, it's not soft, and it's got multi-joints. So the hard swim bait with multi-joints, these are going to be baits that you fish aggressively. You know, you're going to reel fast, pause, reel real fast, pause, get that bait to dance around and trigger those fish. You know, those soft swim baits, we talked about fooling fish. Now we're talking about triggering fish. You know, let's start off with this guy right here. This is the bull shad. This is actually a big bull shad. Again, that 6 to 7-inch seems to be key, and you don't need specialized gear for it. But this is actually a bigger bull shad, but I grabbed it so you guys can see it. You can see hard bait, multi-joint, and this thing's got a really, really tight action. So you're gonna be burning this through the water and pause it. Burn, 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 pause, a lot like the crankbait that we talk about all the time. And you're gonna fish a lot of these baits the same way. Again, you're trying to tap into that fish's natural instinct to chase something down and react. So the bull shad, you know, Mike Buka makes awesome baits, and he's kind of the, you know, like I said earlier when we were talking about these custom baits that you got to wait a long time for. He's kind of bridged that gap. That's how he used to be. Now you can get him in a lot of retail stores. His production is very quick, but he's kind of got that garage bait maker feel to him. But the bull shad right there, so a real tight swimming bait, and puts big ones in the boat. Again, this is the 9-inch. You don't have to throw that big of one, but out here on Chick, you know, we're chasing big stripers, we're chasing big largemouth, and they're eating giant gizzard shads. So one thing I will say, I might have talked about it a little bit with the soft swim baits. You know, the soft swim baits, you're going with natural colors. You want to go real realistic. Again, you're not fishing them very fast. Those fish have a lot of time to examine them, and you got to fool them, right? So you got to go natural. The rest of these baits, color-wise, you're going to go with bold colors. You know, it's all about drawing power with these big swim baits. You know, you go out, and one guy is throwing this bait right here, and another guy is throwing this guy right here. Every fish in the area is gonna follow this bait. It just has more drawing power. So one thing you can do if you are throwing a smaller bait is throw bright colors. That way they can see it farther. You're effectively fishing a larger area. You know, if those fish can see that bait from 30 feet as opposed to 10 feet, you've just tripled the area, the size that you're actually fishing with each cast. So you're literally covering more water. So you really want to key in on drawing power. Bigger baits, brighter colors for the hard baits. Again, when you're trying to fool those fish, go natural. You know, if you're fishing muddy water, you can go with something like a chartreuse shad, something like that. But typically, you're going to want to go with something that looks fairly realistic. So the bull shad, great bait. Again, I'll link favorite sizes and colors down below. The next one I want to talk about, I only have 4 baits in this category. Again, I don't fish them a lot, only when the conditions are right and I feel like I can get those fish to chase down and react to a swim bait. The next guy is going to be this guy right here. That's the Spro BBZ. That's an 8-inch bait. It's got a nice knocker in it. This is actually a slow sink. They come in floater, slow sink, and fast sink. You know, a floater is going to be like a wake bait style of bait, something that puts a big V up on the surface. I didn't put that in this video because that's more of a wake bait category video, but the slow sink, great bait. You know, fire that out there, reel, and that thing is just swimming along. That bait's in there, that knocking, it's got that nice knock sound. But if you do have a follower, and I can't stress this enough, if you guys are throwing glide baits or hard swim baits shallow, make sure you guys are wearing good polarized sunglasses, because you will see some of the biggest fish that live in your fishery. They will come out and show themselves when they're checking these baits out. But again, you're gonna fire out there, you're gonna reel it back, and that thing's just got a real tight swim. You can pause it and it'll kind of dart off to the side. But the Spro, the BBZ, that is a great trout imitating hard bait. 2 other baits for you real quick, and then we'll jump into glide baits. This guy, it's funny, this is actually the Sebile Magic Swimmer. Now this guy was in my arsenal early on. We're talking like mid 2000s when it came out. I believe that's when it came out. But the day that I actually caught my PB, my 15, I caught on a Huddleston, but I started off throwing the Magic Swimmer, and my buddy Wes was throwing one as well, and he actually caught like an 8 or 10 pound rainbow on it. So what's cool about this bait, you see it's not very tall, and that is something I want to emphasize with hard baits. The taller you get, the less hookup ratio, the less fish you're going to land, because there is a lot of hard plastic, resin, whatever the bait's made out of, in the way of that fish eating that bait and getting the hook. So you can see it's still a hard bait, but it's very short. And this bait really shines on big spotted bass. If you're on a herring fishery and that is your main forage, that is what those fish are feeding on offshore, this is the bait for you. I like it in the 140 size and this is the 165 size. Yep, 165. Totally depends on you, but this guy, same thing. You can get real erratic with it as that water warms up and those fish want to chase. You can make it look like a fleeing meal. So that guy right there. And then the last bait I want to talk about is this guy right here. This is the Jackal Gantarelle and the Junior. You can see this is a big meal. I mean, that is a full-size panfish, a full-size bluegill. But again, a lot of hard bait in the way of those trebles. So this guy right here is a winner. And this is the Junior. If you're targeting giant fish, if you're targeting 10-pounders, go with this guy. If you just want to dabble into the hard jointed swimbait game and you don't want technique specific rods or big gear, go with this guy right here. So many big fish have been caught on this guy. It doesn't seem to have that hookup issue. You can see it's a fairly small bait, so those fish, you know, a 3-pounder can get this thing in its mouth. So you don't have any issue with hookup on these baits. Now this is a special bait, and I was just throwing it down in Florida for a little bit. And what's cool about this, we'll get into the glide baits next, but what's cool about this bait, how you fish it, fire it out there, reel, let off. And what this thing's gonna do, it's gonna track. As soon as you let off, it just kind of flows off to one side or the other. So a lot of times these big fish, you know, when they're inspecting the soft swim baits, they come up to it, they're either gonna eat it or they're not, right? But these, you're trying to make those fish react. So when this thing's swimming, you know, this thing swimming, right? A lot of these big fish will just come up and they'll just track it, right? Reel, let off. And as that directional change, same thing with an A-rig when you do that rod twitch, or same thing with a glide bait when you twitch. When you do those directional changes, that is, in my opinion, what triggers those fish either to eat or to bounce, to bail. So when this thing is swimming, that fish is just back there tracking it, right? This thing's swimming, reel, let off. It's a directional change. That is when you're gonna get 95% of your bites. When you do something different, those fish are gonna be tracking it for a long time, but when that thing gets out of cadence and goes one way or the other, that is when you're gonna get bit. The Spro does it as well. You know, burn, you know, reel, let that thing dart off to the side. That is when you're gonna get bit. Same thing with the bull shad and the sabile. So now that we got hard multi-joint baits out of the way, let's talk about glide baits. Glide baits, you know, that's kind of taken the fishing world by storm the last, I don't know, 6-7 years or so. But we've been throwing them since the beginning. A lot of trial and error, a lot of success, a lot of failures. But we've really limited it down to some key baits, 5 or 6 key baits. And 2 major categories. We have the baits you're gonna throw in open water, and then we have the baits that you're gonna throw next to structure. Cover baits, open water baits. So let's talk about open water baits, because that seems to be the most expensive category in glide baits. You know, that's where you're gonna have your mothers, your Hinkles, your KGBs, your bait sandy, you know, your Gancrafts. There are some really expensive baits in that category because they have to have a real wide swim, real wide. You know, you're not gonna get real aggressive with these baits. They're almost like the soft swim baits where you're trying to fool these fish into eating. So they just have that real kind of slow meandering S swim action. You try and get real aggressive with them, they're going to end up looking stupid. They end up like rolling on themselves or fouling. They're not made to be real twitchy, but these are your open water glides. So these are going to be baits that you fish on your highland reservoirs, clearer water, things where, fisheries where fish have good visibility, and you're trying to get those fish, pull those big fish into eating. But open water glides, I have 3 of them here for you. Again, we're talking about glide baits that are readily available, that we have had a lot of success on, that we have a ton of confidence in. There are so many different baits on the market, but these 3 right here have put big ones in the boat for us. Many fish we have a ton of confidence in. I'm gonna start off with the Gancraft 230. This was the original bait from Japan. I remember buying these off of Ichiban overseas before we even had these things available out here in the States. And being from the West Coast, there was a lot of guys throwing these early on. It was probably one of the original kind of glide baits that was mass produced. But that Gancraft 230, it's a very realistic hard bait. You can see just it's a Japanese bait, very well tuned. This is going to be one of those baits you fire out there, fire it across your transition, your big points, main lake points, and just go to work. Just reel. And you can do little twitches, slow. Everything you need to do with these is slow, and they're gonna just change their direction just a little bit, and that's when you're gonna get your bites. But again, these things look like a stupid, lazy trout, just swimming, being stupid. But that guy right there, as far as open water glides, it's not too expensive, but the Gancraft 230 is a staple in that category. Very great looking bait, swims good. You will need some special swim bait gear for this category, but that right there is a must. So if you find yourself fishing a big reservoir, a highland reservoir or a lowland reservoir, not a lot of current, open water, clear visibility, or good visibility, clear water, that is a great bait. Now, 2 more for you. This guy right here, this is actually a carp pattern, but this is the Bait Sanity. This is the Explorer, and this bait, we've talked about it for years now, comes in at a fairly inexpensive price point for the category, and just has a great swim. It's put a lot of big ones in the boat, especially the last year or 2. I've seen a lot of threads on the internet or Facebook talking about, which open water glide should I get, yada, yada, yada. And a lot of the time people are recommending this guy right here. And we agree, we've been recommending it for a long time. Very easy to fish, very good swim. And they come out with some really realistic and cool colors. Again, this is that carp, but trout is great. But again, real big swim to it, and just looks like a lazy, dumb fish. But I think this is the bait. I'm almost positive this is the bait that Matt had his epic striper day on, because big striper eat it too. But big largemouth, big striper, big spots, smallies, all of them eat this guy right here. And there is an actual smaller version. I'm going to talk about that in the cover glide section. But that guy right there, that Bait Sanity, is an awesome, fairly inexpensive bait for that category. Now, the last bait that I'm going to talk about is kind of a crossover bait, because we use it a lot in cover, but it also has tremendous drawing power in open water, and that is going to be the S-Waver 200. Now this is a bait, there's the 168 for comparison. This is a bait that's been around for a long time. We're friends with those guys at River to Sea, and we talked to them for a long time about coming out with a larger version of the 168, and they finally did. And so many double digits we've caught on this guy right here. Again, that's the 200 size. This color right here is actually called the Warden. It's a kind of a color that I wanted, requested it, and we got it. But light trout, the Warden, again, you'll see in almost all of these, you're going with bolder colors. Even the trout colors, they're not ghosty. You know, they have something to them. They silhouette really well in the water column, and they have that's what you're looking for, that drawing power. So again, the 200, you can fish it tight around cover, but you can also fish it in open water. Go with your trout patterns, go with light trout, go with this is, like I said, the Warden, or they call it Warden hitch sometimes, but that bait in the category is fairly inexpensive and it catches big ones. So that about wraps up that part of the glide baits. Again, guys, so much going on in this video. I don't want to get sidetracked too much, but if you're fishing clear water, you're fishing open water, you're going to want to go with one of these glides, either the Gancraft 230, the Bait Sanity, or the S-Waver 200. Again, baits that are readily available that you can get in most of your tackle shops. So now let's talk about cover glides. So we talked about open water glides. They have a completely different swim than the cover glides. And what I mean by a cover glide, you know, we've done multiple videos on this stuff in the past, but something that you can get real erratic with. A lot like, you know, the multi-joint baits, but you can get more reactive with the cover glides. So on a basic retrieve, you're reeling this thing back, it's just doing this, right? It's gonna be tighter than the open water glides. It's gonna be a tighter action. Now where these things shine is when you come next to a shade corner or a hard piece of cover, hard piece of structure, or some kind of cover like a dock, something like that. You can get real erratic with this, and these baits won't blow out, they won't roll. So typically on these baits, it's gonna be 4 to 8 handle turns. Reel, 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 twitch, twitch. So what that bait's doing, it's swimming tighter than the open water glide. Reel, 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 twitch, twitch. So it's gonna shoot one way and then dart the other. So again, when those fish are tracking that bait, they're seeing that bait and they're just tracking it. When you dart one way and dart the other, they hit it like a freight train. That is when you're gonna get 95% of your bites. Now again, you're not gonna get as twitchy with the open water glides, but you are gonna want to add reel twitches or some kind of directional change to your baits, just not as hard or as quick. So 1, 2, 3, 4, twitch, twitch. So that thing's swimming one side, the other side, and that is when you're gonna get bit. So when you are reeling this thing, when you are coming up to the spot on the area you're fishing, whatever it may be, maybe a stick up or a lay down or something like that, that is where you're gonna add those twitches in. Now, my favorite baits for this category, I have 5, and one kind of miscellaneous. I'll get to that one, but hands down, #1 favorite is going to be the S-Waver 168. This is the original. This is the one that kind of, for me, started the glide bait craze. You know, I was throwing the bigger baits, but started having a lot of success with big spotted bass, big smallmouth, and big largemouth on that guy right there. Favorite colors, light trout, hands down. Didn't even bring one, but I'll link it down below. But light trout, it's kind of yellow. It doesn't even look like a trout, but no matter where we are in the country, no matter which clarity we have caught some giant smallmouth, big spots, and big largemouth on the 168. Now again, with these glides, you don't necessarily have to have specific swim bait gear. You know, you can get away with this, throwing this on a jig rod. So like a heavy action rod, 7.2 to 7.6, you want that longer rod, a little bit slower tip, but you want like a fairly stout rod for throwing these guys. Again, you can get away with your heavy jig rod. So that guy right there, the S-Waver 168, hands down, if you're looking to get your first glide bait. If you just wanted to try it, put your feet in the water just a little bit, just try and get into the hard swim bait stuff, glide bait stuff, go with that guy right there. That is a must. Now along those same lines, I'll do these two real quick. This is actually the Bait Sanity Antidote. I talked about that in a recent video, and that is the Gan Craft 178. So here it is compared to the 230. That just has to do with size. So that guy right there, again, very fine-tuned bait. The Antidote, very slow swimming, looks great, but you can get real erratic with these when you get to the spot. Next one I want to talk about, this is kind of a newer bait on the market. This came out a couple years ago, but you could tell that a lot of time and research went into this bait because it's a fairly inexpensive bait in the category, in the glide bait world, but it has a lot of the features that your higher custom made glide baits have, and like swiveling hook hangers. You know, when you hook those fish and they come up and they shake your head, if you're throwing just your normal straight split ring, that is going to lock out, and that gives that fish more leverage to pull that hook to you know, get off. So you can add double split rings to help that. But this guy right here, this is the Arashi Glide. They went ahead and put in swiveling hook hangers, so you don't have to worry about that. It comes in some good colors, you know, your trout colors, some good open water colors as well, but typically I fish this around cover just like the other ones. You're gonna get real aggressive every 4 to 6 handle turns, twitch, or anytime you come up to that key piece of our area where they can ambush from, get erratic and add a couple real twitches. That guy's a must. Last one I want to talk about, this one's been around now for a few years, and this is actually the Sneaky Pete. This bait works great in any conditions. It really shines if you have any type of water movement or current. So if you're fishing a delta system or a river system where there's moving water, this thing is a real tight, quick action bait. So if you're fishing headwaters, you know, where below spillways, that sort of stuff, you're striper fishing in current, this guy right there, you can get real aggressive with it. It doesn't blow out. We've really latched onto that bait here in the last year or two because it continues to produce in conditions when others can't. But the Sneaky Pete, great, that 6 to 7 inch size range seems to be the perfect fit in all of these categories. But that guy right there is one of our favorites. It took us a little long to latch onto it, but it puts big ones in the boat. Now the last bait that I want to talk about real quickly, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with gear, is going to be this guy right here. Now I'm not sure which category you want to put it in, but it is a hard bait. It's a single joint bait, and you can fish it like a glide bait. This is actually the Glide Fluke. So you can get real aggressive with it, real tight swimming. You can rip it, you can pop it, pause it. It's supposed to act like a super fluke, you know, a soft kind of little jerk bait. But this guy, like I said, hard bait. It swims kind of like a glide bait. You can get real aggressive with it, add those reel twitches in, those rod twitches, change up your cadence, and that thing gets real aggressive and doesn't blow out. So if you're looking for a bait to check out, I've had a lot of success in the last year throwing this guy right here, that little Glide Fluke, this size and the smaller one. Again, I'll link those down below in the video description. But that's kind of like a in between that hard bait category, the glide bait and the multi-joint bait category, but that Glide Fluke is a winner. Now let's talk about gear real quick. Swim bait rods, if you're throwing, I'm gonna say anything larger than a 6-inch bait, you're gonna need a specific swim bait rod. You're gonna need a swim bait reel with bigger line on it. And when I say swim bait reel, if you're throwing a 6-inch bait, you can get away with a 200 size reel. If you're throwing stuff bigger, go with a 300 size. Again, we'll link our favorites, but all of this stuff, all these baits, we fish braid to leader. We fish 65 or 80 pound braid to mono or fluorocarbon leader. And you have to be very specific with your fluorocarbon, because fluorocarbon does not give. And if you backlash with the braid, you're gonna pop your knot or pop your bait off. So for the last decade or so, we've been teaching to throw braid to leader to monofilament line, 15, 20, 25, 30 pound test, depending on how big of a bait you're throwing, either 65 or 80 pound braid. Put that together with your favorite connection knot. We like the blood knot, 9 loops one way, 9 loops the other way. Cinch that thing down and you're not gonna have any issues. It all depends on who you're talking to. You talk to one guy, he loves to throw just straight mono. Some guys like to throw straight fluoro, which I will do every once in a while. If I'm fishing crystal clear water, and let's say I'm throwing, let's say the 168, I might go something with just straight 15 pound fluorocarbon if I feel like the fish are line shy or they're really spooky. But 99% of the time we're going braid to leader, and we've taught this for years. The problem with straight mono is there's so much stretch in monofilament. You lose sensitivity, and when you go to jack that fish, when you go to hit them hard, there's so much stretch in that line. We just didn't like it. Once you go to braid to leader, the sensitivity and the reaction, how quickly that bait reacts to what you're doing, just increases so much. So depending on the day, we'll throw either braid to mono or this guy right here. Now this is a new line that came to the market, and I think Matt did a video on it last year or so, but this is our new favorite. So the benefit of this is actually, it was a saltwater line. This is actually FC 100 shock leader. So it's fluorocarbon, so you get the benefit of having less visibility if those fish are line shy, but you also have a little bit of stretch when you backlash or when you go to jack that big fish. She cracks your bait going away from you. You go to hit them hard with that big 8-foot swim bait rod. You want something to give, right? You don't want your line to pop. This stuff right here is phenomenal. And they make it in some great sizes. You can get it down, 15, 20 pound tests, but you can get it 25, 30, 35, 40 pound tests. So you swim bait fishermen, if you haven't tried this, I emphasize it, definitely try this shock leader right there. Like I said, it's a saltwater based line that works fantastic for freshwater swim baits. Again, gear, if you're throwing the 6-inch stuff below, you can get away with your favorite jig rod. But remember, if you're throwing big baits with treble hooks, you're gonna go with something a little lighter tip. If you're throwing something with a jig hook, you're gonna go with something a little bit more stout of a rod. But again, we'll link all that stuff down below in the video description. Don't want this video to be an hour long. So there it is, guys. That is a ton of baits for you. Pick and choose a couple in each category depending on the type of fisherman you are. If you're a guy that likes to just throw bait out and just slowly reel it, go with something like this. Depending on your conditions. If you're a guy that wants to get real aggressive and always has to be doing something, adding action to your bait, go with one of the multi-joint hard baits or go with one of the cover glides. It's your choice. Do whatever you want. But these baits right here, this is narrowed down, believe it or not, from what's out on the market. And in old videos, I'm sure you guys have seen my swim bait wall, or you've seen Matt's unorganized swim bait collection. We have a problem. We've fished stuff for many years, but these baits right here put fish in the boat. We wouldn't lie to you. This is what we truly have confidence in. It's what we believe in, and it's what we use. You can see most of these baits have hook rash on it. We change out all of the terminal tackle, all of the hook, split rings and stuff on these baits. We switch out. Almost forgot to talk about that, but this is stuff that we use. Everything has a time and a place. But believe it or not, like I said, that is narrowed down. So pick the category that you want to fish, pick the category that you want to learn, and these baits in those different categories will give you an awesome opportunity, a chance, a shot at putting the biggest bass of your life in the boat. If you guys have any questions, please leave those down below in the comments section. I will try to get to those as soon as possible. But you guys are awesome. If you guys like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on that notifications. Click that little bell. That way you know when we have videos coming out. If you don't know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes in between, we have videos every week. We haven't missed one in 3.5, 4 years. So again, questions, leave them down below. We'll get to them as soon as possible. But as always, guys, we appreciate you. Have a good one.